Hey, thanks so much for clicking on this video. We're going to do a response to the recent Josh Strife Hayes video talking about why he's sad about MMOs. Now, this was sent to me over Discord via Wendy. Thank you so much for making this as a request. And while this is not going to be a reaction to his video, this is going to be a response, basically taking his points and kind of hitting them one at a time, line by line. Now, a couple disclaimers for those of you who don't know. Josh says this is a kind of an oversimplification of his kind of thought process. So understand that this is more of a conversation rather than a kind of a deep dive data analysis from his perspective on the state of MMOs and why he is currently sad about their state. And I'm going to say this as somebody who's been a longtime MMO player. This is obviously for me coming at my perspective. Like, if you guys don't know and haven't ever followed my content before, my name is Brian. I'm an avid MMO player, been playing since the days of Final Fantasy 11. I've got 5 kids, I've got a full-time job, and I make content whenever I can fit it into my day. And that's essentially what this is going to be. So hopefully you understand where I'm coming from, where I disagree, but I want to focus first on where I actually agree with Josh. And as a kind of a side note, he does go into kind of a concept that I see happening a lot, which is, I've heard it as analysis paralysis, or perfection is the enemy of the good. He says perfection is the enemy of done. And so a lot of people, he gets into a conversation in this video, towards the end, talking about a lot of people saying, hey, I want to start streaming or content creation, but they want it to be perfect. Honestly, couldn't agree more with his analysis there. I think that in and of itself is a message that everybody needs to hear who's ever thinking about doing content creation and more. Go listen, go watch that video. I'll include a link in the description here if you guys haven't seen it come across your feed yet. But first and foremost, he talks about and brings up some examples about MMOs and why he's sad. He feels that MMOs need to hit 2 things. They need to be a really good game, and they need to have a lot of content. And those are 2 interesting and correct points. But we're going to explore that here in a little bit. He also then goes on to talk about games that do that, these points very well. And that's Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy 14, ESO, as some examples. And he really leans into the idea that MMOs need to be single player. And this is something that is both true, but also something that's very generational. So again, I think this is me coming from at this discussion from a different generation as a millennial in this case. I don't really know where the lines fall for Josh. He looks like a young guy. Awesome guy, by the way. We've had him on the podcast. I really enjoy his content, and I'm very happy for his success. So I'm not trying to attack him. I'm just talking about his ideas here. So just in case anybody thinks I'm stirring up any kind of drama. And its core, the single player aspect is absolutely right when you look at the numbers. When you look at just the numbers in terms of MMORPGs, the ones that have the volume cater to a wider range of players, and that's including single player games. One of the videos that I've been working on is a script for the upcoming Riot game in which they state, if you want a single player game, go play a single player game. We're making an MMO, and it's what I'm calling Riot's Gambit. Is this going to be something that rings true? It's fine to say on paper, but when you look at just the numbers alone, having the ability to play an MMO as a single player is a real win for the genre. That's what we've seen happen time and time again. And this isn't to say that gamers aren't frustrated by the fact that we've seen this shift into single player. My personal belief about this as a software engineer is I believe actually AI, artificial intelligence, is going to end up solving kind of this problem, allowing players to play a single player game, but in a multiplayer way. And that's where I hope the industry goes. And that's actually why I'm very hopeful for the genre as itself. To Josh's 2 key points, like he says, it's an oversimplification. Making a really good game is actually the hardest thing out of all of it. Making a really good game and then having a lot of content to do, that's also a very hard thing to do just from a business perspective. Imagine going into a boardroom and say, hey, I need, like a couple $100 million to put into this genre, and it's a huge risk. If it pays off, yay. But most likely, we're going to launch. It's not going to have enough content because that's just the way in the state of it. Because essentially you're going to get frustrated and you're going to want to have that minimal viable product. That's a term essentially saying, hey, it's good enough, we can add on to it. And we've seen the minimal viable product, I think, negatively hit the gaming industry and gamers more often than not. More often than not, MVPs tend to, I think, overall frustrate gamers who are really wanting that full experience. So I'm with him there. But when it comes down to MMOs being single player and MMOs being multiplayer, I think it's tied into a huge misremembrance of MMOs. Like, MMOs weren't massive. It took World of Warcraft really exploding the genre before like everybody was all of a sudden like, holy crap, there's money to be made. This is really interesting. It was also in an age where like online games and that kind of stuff were really first coming online, and World of Warcraft offered a lot. It offered just the ability to play by yourself, but also building off of what has been experimented and iterated on before, aka me coming in as Final Fantasy 11 player in this case, that required you to play with other people. And so Josh said that like the age of forced multiplayer, that's just something that like, you know, isn't going to really be happening. And I honestly just think that what ended up happening is that you ended up giving players a new option, and you opened up MMOs to a wider audience who might not actually like MMOs. I generally believe this about a lot of people and a lot of commentators when it comes, or game reviewers, that get forced to have to play this because it is the new hotness, or it is what's trending, or like when you look at the trends and what's hot and forcing people to review games. Like, let's say I am an avid Mega Man fan. I play all the Mega Man games. I absolutely love Mega Man. And if you put me on a review for a Mega Man game, I would probably review it much higher than I would review a non-Mega Man game. You know, in that regards, I have a bias there. Same thing's true in terms of the opposite happening within MMOs, is that you have somebody who doesn't actually like MMOs go review an MMO. Turns out they don't like the MMO nature of it. And the question that I always kind of have been asking, and I think one of the main theses of this channel, the main question this channel tends to ask overall kind of in its subtext, is what is an MMO? Like, what do you qualify as that? Is it going to be a single player game that exists in a persistent online world? And almost in a way, we could start to categorize MMOs in so many different lanes, right? You have the MMO that's the persistent online world, and that it does have forced multiplayer. And then you have the online world that is more casual, and that it doesn't necessarily require anybody can play anything they want. It's a single player game, and it happens to sit alongside an MMO that if you want to engage with after the fact, the game obviously is more than happy to keep you playing the game in the long run. Now, overall, we've seen huge shifts in player expectation. We've also seen more and more online games come online, offering more choices to more players at the end of the day. So I don't actually have any sadness about the genre. I think honestly the genre is in the best health and best shape it's been in, and I my evidence of that is that we are seeing companies actually invest in the genre again, where I felt for the longest time players were so rigid or fearful, or the business models were awful, and you know, all kinds of reasons, hesitant to actually leave their game. And right now we're seeing kind of more seasonal based play, where gamers kind of hop from MMO to MMO and back and forth, and you know, in and out in that regards. And that's kind of what I would always describe as what Yoshi P has really established with the Final Fantasy 14 model. People seeing success with that game, seeing what it's doing, and saying, hey, can we replicate that, and also maybe get on that seasonal track and that change. What I really see is the conflict is when that same thing happens. Like if two big MMOs launched the expansion within the same week, obviously one's going to win. And we saw that actually happen, as I hit the mic, we saw that actually happen this last January, February with, you know, Guild Wars 2, Destiny, Elden Ring not being an MMO, but note that like there is everybody's competing for your time. The time that you have is the only thing that is actually valuable, because it can't be, you don't know how much you have, and you can't replenish it. But like I said, like as a software engineer, I see AI kind of being a solution to all of this. How is this going to be a solution, Brian? Well, my view of the world, when I look at certain games, when I look at the power of AI, it's something I'm studying currently. When I look at what that can do, imagine, if you will, just come with me on a little journey through MMO multiplayer. And imagine, if you will, a world that as you play the game kind of learns things about you, aka Forza's Gravatar system, for example. So you take that system, you apply that into an MMO, and all of a sudden, imagine a world in an MMO where every enemy out in the open world, you know, almost like Elden Ring in this way, is a threat to you as a player. You going by yourself is a risk. And so as a player, you have the ability to choose it. Imagine now being able to take in party members. Those party members could be real life, or they could be AI. What I hope and envision for the future is that those party members, those AI party members, are built off of real players. Either your friends list, your free company, and more, who happen to be at work or taking care of their kids, or, you know, doing whatever else for the time being. And then you're still having kind of that social experience. Anytime my brother runs me off the road in Forza, like I text him, you asshole, like you jerk, what are you doing? So like in that regards, like having that kind of almost in a way, I'm going to use the wrong term, but hopefully you understand where what I'm thinking, because I can't think of the right term, a parasocial world in which that, like, yeah, you have AI representation representing you as a player in a persistent online world, and you as the player can then choose whether you want to engage with it socially or not. So you as a player who maybe not necessarily into a multiplayer aspect, you want a single player experience, yeah, then you can. But the world in and of itself is actually balanced around a multiplayer experience, but you're not punished for not wanting to play a multiplayer game. And that's where I see kind of the future of the genre going. I'm going to kind of reference my notes to make sure I hit everything home. Now, like I said, one note I hear, I said, I'd argue that within the styles of MMOs, if your goal is to be the biggest, it's almost like you should just make a single player game at that point. Namely that, like, obviously the persistence and the cycle of players they want coming back, not necessarily the CCU, the concurrence, but the kind of the daily active or the monthly active users as the kind of the be all metric that people want to see hitting, coming in and out, coming back to the game, maybe buying the expansion or, paying for a subscription or buying something from the cash shop. Like, ultimately they want those touch points to be happening. Now, like Josh, like the video title, why he's sad about MMOs, I don't see any reason to be sad about MMOs. I think that when you start to actually break down, like, are you sad that they're single player? Are you sad that, like, maybe a game isn't speaking to you, or overall, like, you just haven't found a home base, or maybe you don't like MMOs, but you always thought you did. I know there's a lot of players who came in with World of Warcraft 2 gaming in total, but in the end of the day, they just weren't gamers. They just really liked playing World of Warcraft. And based off the numbers and based off of how that game's doing, like, I think World of Warcraft is set to have a really big couple of years once they kind of get their house in order, and once they release either the next, whatever they end up working on, especially with the Microsoft transition. That's going to be interesting to see, especially if that ends up happening. Doesn't happen, who knows what is going to be the case. But to Josh's points, oh yeah, I know he says it's a real simple thing. The hardest thing to do is make a fun game. Like that is the hardest thing to do in gaming. Find the fun and then iterate on that. And I think essentially for the genre itself, the thing that we will see established is, you create a good game. Like, that's, if you don't do that, like, there's nothing to help you. But I think what we'll see here within the shift of the MMO, it's not necessarily being sad about it, but it's more that we see a shift in the business model of the MMO being more, capable, offering more options and serving the community better with less, monetary, greed. I think that would be the best thing for the genre as a whole. I honestly am waiting to see some examples of that to provide some feedback. I'm questioning the validity of a battle pass over a subscription, namely because the battle passes could be implemented horribly, and that's going to be my concern. Hopefully that's not the case, but anyway, guys, go check out Josh's video. Thanks so much for your time. If you listen to this on these words, thanks for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, my thoughts on it. Thanks to Wendy for sending this my way. If you guys have any other videos you want me to kind of weigh in with my 2 cents, hit me up on Discord. You can always do that on Twitter. You can do it in the comments below. All good ways to contact me. Hopefully you guys have a great day. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you in my next one. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.